This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher Podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. It's a real privilege to have you back this week on another great episode that we've got in store for you. Today, we're going to be talking about success. We're going to be talking about your story and how your story helps you be successful. And so the question is, are you telling your story very well? Do you even in tune with your story? What is your story? And are you even explaining it to people in ways that they can connect with it? Because people buy the why. The old famous Simon Sinek video of TED Talks, his most watched TED Talk talks about the why and the story and how people connect to you and your business. Well, today we have the privilege of having a real true expert on the show that's in filmmaking, in the media business, and helps people tell their story to maximize their opportunities for success in the world. The better you can tell the story, the better you will be. And so today we have the privilege of having Craig Dehut on the show. Craig is the founder of Appian Media, which is a Christian-based nonprofit organization that helps engage people in the Bible. Yes, that's what I just said. Engages people through his work to draw people closer to the Bible. It's an amazing nonprofit. He's a filmmaker, he's a cinematographer, he's a keynote speaker, a podcaster himself, and he's on a mission. His purpose is to create a positive change in one community at a time, and he's doing a phenomenal job with that. So without further ado, Craig, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh man, we're excited to have you. You have just a unique background and blend of different talents and perspectives that's really making a difference out there. So help the audience catch up to speed here on who Craig is. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I grew up on the West Coast, and my family eventually moved us out here to Indiana, which is actually where we're based now. And I grew up loving creative outlets, so writing and drawing and telling stories, and eventually found a camera in my hand after someone let us have that. And we as kids, I'm one of 7 children, and we'd be out in the backyard just shooting all kinds of crazy things. And it was probably at 14, 15 years old where I thought I actually could see myself doing this as a career. How do I turn this into something that I could do for work? So I went to film school in 2005 and graduated in 2007. And from there, worked in news. I've worked for other video production companies. And for the last 10 years, about 10 years, I've been working as a freelance video producer. So I hire myself out as a producer and cinematographer, editor, drone pilot for companies, a lot of nonprofits actually that need their stories told well. They're trying to engage with their audience and communicate something important, and so I help them do that with film and video. And back in 2015, met another creative here in the Indianapolis area. His name is Stuart Peck, and together we founded Appian Media, which is this nonprofit video production company where we travel over to the lands of the Bible. We've been to Israel and Turkey and Jordan and Egypt, and we produce documentaries to help people see where these things happened and to help them understand the reliability and the relevance of the biblical text.
My goodness. You said a lot there. I want to break some of this stuff down.
Sure.
Let's start with the media industry as a whole. what is so special about media? What draws
Mm.
you to that? And because I could just tell you're very passionate about that, and I get it. You drew to it as a kid, but what happened? Like,
Hmm.
what made you just take off and do this on the level that you're doing it today?
Yeah. I think storytelling is something that I've just been in love with for a long time. So I literally did that growing up. I wrote stories. I drew comics. I wanted to be a cartoonist for many years. I took photographs. So, I did get a camera in my hands and start taking photos. And then I realized that filmmaking actually lets me combine all of those things together. And so I
Hmm.
get to draw because I draw storyboards, and I get to write. Not only do I do documentary, but I have done short films and things in the past. And I get to shoot pictures, video, and go out and create in that way. And so video production really is just combining a lot of my loves, my interests into one thing. And eventually was with the founding of Appian Media, it combined another thing I'm very passionate about, which is the Bible, which is a relationship with God. And suddenly I'm able to do all of those things together. I just love putting something in front of an audience and watching them react, and in a way that maybe they're learning something they've not learned before, or they're being entertained and they're being inspired. Film has a special power to do that, not provoke. Yeah, I mean, really, yes, provoke emotion and get people stirred up. And while in many ways we've seen Hollywood use that to provoke things that really ought not to be provoked, to get us thinking or changing our minds about things that really we shouldn't. The tool is so powerful to encourage good moral things in people and to instruct and educate and inspire. And I'm just excited to be able to do that, like I said, for companies, for nonprofits, and for people interested in learning more about God through what we do with Appian Media.
That is amazing. When you think about the power of films, the power of the camera, right? I don't care who you are. Everybody was cheering for Rocky when the Rocky movies came out. Like, here's this underdog guy who's a nobody that fights the world champ and eventually becomes the champion. Like this rags to riches kind of story, the underdog story, right? Film can bring out emotion. It can bring out passion. It can bring out anger. Like, some of these villain movies, like Batman or something. Like, you really hate some of these characters, right? Hannibal Lecter or something. Like, it just has a way of really connecting on a very personal level, or very kind of just deeper level.
Right.
Whether you're watching funniest home videos on a Sunday and you're laughing and bringing out that emotion, or you're seeing something biblical. I remember, was it Passion of the Christ that Mel Gibson did back a
Hmm.
few years
Hmm.
ago? And man, when I watched that, I was like, oh my gosh, that was powerful
Yeah.
rendition of those times and Jesus and his life and the brutality and just holy crap, right? It is so powerful. But where do you see the media today? There's so much stuff. Like, everybody wants to be on camera. Everybody's producing videos on TikTok and social media. Like, what do you think are some of the complications and challenges in media today?
Sure. It is interesting how it's changed. And I'm not quite 40 years old, but I've been around long enough to know that there was a time that if you wanted a film made, you went to Hollywood. They were the gatekeepers. They were the ones with the tools and the talent, and the money. And so they were the ones who produced it. Now, really, with the advent of technology that is significantly more affordable, anyone can produce something and it looked fairly good. I mean, just the other day, I needed to record something, and at the moment, all I had was my phone. And 15 years ago, it would have been like, well, I'm sorry, I can't produce anything. I've just got a phone. Well, today, I can pull a phone out and shoot 4K video and make it sound good and look good. It's amazing what technology has done. And in many ways, like you said, it has complicated it a bit. The formats, it's not just theaters. It was theaters, and then it was home video, and then it was TV, and then it was social media and TikTok. And so even when clients come to me now, I've got to ask questions I never thought I would ask before. Is this vertical or is this horizontal? Where is it going? Is it going to be digital? Are you going to, burn it onto physical media? Are you going to show it on a projector? So it is in many ways more complicated, but in many ways, it's more accessible.
Yes.
We have more people who can tell stories, and in many ways tell them very well because the tools are more accessible. And when it comes to the kind of stuff that we create at Appian Media, I am thankful that we don't have to go to Hollywood and ask for permission anymore. They'd never make this. For obvious reasons, they would not be interested. But through the advent of things like crowdfunding and through the advent of the internet and other means where we can raise funds without even a production company or an investor behind us, Appian Media is a non-for-profit. We go straight to the consumer and say, this is what we'd like to create. Would you like to donate to make this thing possible? And over the last 8 or 9 years, the answer has been a resounding yes. And it's inspiring and it's encouraging. We're certainly not the only ones doing it. We weren't the first to do it, and Lord willing, we won't be the last. But it is inspiring to see other people stepping up and saying, hey, this used to be unavailable to most of us, but now the tools are here and the money can be found and the talent is growing. And I'm encouraged by that. That's something I'm very passionate about is training up the next generation to have some of these skills so that more people can make content to counter a lot of what is coming out that's not as beneficial.
Yeah. There's it. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about. That's a great segue. Craig, is there's so much stuff out there, media related stuff. I'm not talking like the national news media and things like that, even though that is an element of this, right? You've got the media outlets, the news stations and what they do and don't do. But then you've got, professional organizations, marketers, putting out content, individuals putting out content, businesses putting out, like, it's just a just pummeling of content being, broadcast out over the waves in every single way possible, which is great. But how do you know what's legit? How do you know what is real or not real? What is fake? There's been a lot of talk in these spaces around, people doing stuff that's fake. It's not real. Foreign countries trying to interfere with U.S. elections and putting fake stuff out there that's not true, just to dry people's emotions and persuade them one way or the other for a particular outcome. And so if you are trying to legitimately connect a client's story about their life or their business or whatever that may be, how do you break through all of this congested area and penetrate that and get that out there to where people know it's real and it's legit? What's the mindset that you have to do that? It seems just extremely difficult to do that.
Yeah, I certainly won't say that it's easy, but I think the way you described it is exactly right. It's not one thing we do and that'll solve it. There's no silver bullet here, but it is a mindset. And so the mindset that I have when clients come to us, come to me and want content created, the mindset that I have with what we produce with Appian Media is we want it to be authentic. How do we make it feel real and genuine? And so documentary allows us to do that. I'm certainly not disparaging on narrative film or feature films. A good scripted story can be just as powerful, but there is always in the back of your mind how much of this is real. And I think that's going to be a more frequently asked question as AI becomes more prominent and as the tools become more available, where there is not a day that goes by where I consume something on the internet and wonder, like, is that true? Is that true? Is that real? We're getting to the point now where I even wonder, is that actually that person? I'm hearing their voice. I'm seeing their face. Is that? And what we can do, is first, you've got to build a reputation to be authentic and real. And there are a variety of ways that you can do that. I always encourage, as much as possible, non-scripted things for the clients that I produce content for. There's a time and a place for scripted things, even teleprompters. But more often than not, I want to do with them what you and I are doing right now, is let's set them down in front of a microphone, in front of a camera, and just ask them authentic questions. Ask them their thoughts on things and help them communicate. Their customers make purchasing decisions. We know this based on how they feel about the individual selling and how they feel about the product being presented. And that's done in an authentic way. It requires a lot of, as far as consumers, how do we sift through the noise? And carefully is the right answer. And don't just get your information from a single source. It used to be that's what we did. Back when it was just radio, you turned on the radio and you listened to a handful of stations. But then there were news stations that you would watch on television, and really there were just a handful of those. Well, now I can get it on an app. I can get it on a website. I can still read a newspaper. I guess people still do that. My first job was actually delivering newspapers, so I do have a love for newspapers, but have not consumed one of those in the last 20 years. But where do you get your information? And my encouragement to people is get it from a variety of sources, not just from one company, not just in one format. And usually the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle of all of those things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So tell me, what makes a good story versus a not so good story or a bad story? Like what is your definition of a good story? What's an example of a good story and how it's told? What goes into that, and explain that to the audience? I think that would be hugely helpful.
If I were to boil it down, I think what makes a story good is that the viewer is better for consuming it. So after they're done consuming that piece of content, whether it's a feature-length film or a documentary, whether it's a short film, whether it's a 15-second commercial, that they are better for it afterwards. Surely we can all remember movies that we got to the end and went, why? I'll never get those 2 hours back. Why did I put myself through that? And I want people really, I want them to finish a piece of content that I have produced or a story that I have told and be inspired to do something productive with it. And that usually involves a couple of different things. Typically, it involves that because they have felt something. And so that's on me as the storyteller to make sure that I'm communicating something that clear, that they know what it is I'm trying to say. And there's a variety of things that you can do to ensure that that happens. But I also want them to feel a certain way about it. And it was, we studied that a lot in school. There are a variety of ways that we can get an audience to feel. And some ways they don't even realize we're doing it. Music is one of those ways. Color, how you color a video. Bluer colors, darker colors make your audience feel sad, and they don't even realize that's why they feel sad, but just color and sound. The length of time between words. It's creating tension, and your audience doesn't realize why I'm getting all tense here. Maybe it's because you just extended someone's response to a question by a second or two. But we're trying to get our audience to feel. After having learned something, they feel a certain way. And hopefully, if we've done our jobs well, they then are inspired to do something productive with it. I would say much of the news that we consume nowadays, we certainly come away feeling something, and it's usually not productive emotions. We feel frustrated, we feel alienated, we feel angry, and we're usually inspired to go and complain about it on social media, sometimes in real life. And that's not productive. Unfortunately, we as a society, we as a species are fired up typically by frustration and anger and
Yep.
things like that, more so than we are with more productive emotions. But it makes it all the more important that we tell the stories that inspire positive change. And that's one of the things that I encourage in all of my clients. Okay, you've come to me, you want to hire me for your company or for your product or for your event, but I ask them questions like, what do you want your audience to do? And what do you want your audience to feel after they've consumed this? And if you can't identify those two things, then we are not turning a camera on until
Right.
we've figured out how to do that and how to do that well.
Let's break down the storytelling a little bit.
Yeah.
You've explained some of the outcomes. You want the viewer to be better. You want them to be motivated or inspired or felt something or, kind of taken to task to go out and do something. I noticed, when I go to the church that we go to here in Louisville, Kentucky, at the end of this, sermon, the pastor, regardless of who's preaching, there's multiple pastors that come in at different times. We have guests come in that are from the outside. We have a couple different internal pastors. But anyway, regardless of who's doing that, it's our church's intention that as you go through the sermon and they relate some, thing in life to the Bible and make it relevant of today, and they kind of connect on these heart and soul levels to really get on a real level with people. Don't just say, I'm doing great, everything's fine, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. Like, really, where are you in life, and where's your relationship with God? Where's your relationship with your family and their balance, and all the stuff that people go to church for. And at the end of every sermon, there's a takeaway. So the two things I want each and every one of you to do is, identify somebody that's hungry on the street that that can benefit from us helping them, or whatever the task may be. There's usually two relatively easy things that everybody can leave there on their to-do list for the week, whether it's inviting, a guest to Easter service or something, or whatever that may be. It's all to drive an outcome of something positive for the faith side of things, right? So when you work with people, do you have people tell their own stories? Do you have people tell their stories for them? How do you prepare people to tell their story, and what kind of goes into the preparation efforts? Because I don't think people understand that. I worked with my marketing company a number of years ago to kind of go through this process myself, and I was not fully prepared, right? It took me it took me a minute to kind of get in that headspace to where I'm not a coach. Talking as a coach and talking as a podcaster and doing my day-to-day things is all good and well, but to tell the story, to give the background and the why and the purpose and, what is it all for kind of stuff, it took me a minute to break out of my normal mindset and really understand that so I can accurately tell that story. And it took many takes. I screwed this up many, many times, and that's okay. And it turned out pretty good. So how do you do that with people? What should people expect to go through this process? So when they're looking to do this, they have an understanding of of how that needs to be done.
It is such an essential part of every piece of content that is often overlooked. It is what we call development. So there are 5 stages of production. You have development, pre-production, production. That's where you're actually shooting it.
Yeah.
Post-production is where you're cutting it together, and distribution. And you need all 5. You can't just jump right into production because you don't know what you're shooting or how you're going to get it done. But I used to think it in terms of just 3. There's pre-production, there's the stuff before the shoot, there's the shoot, and then there's putting it together. But before you start with the pre-production, which is the practical, the when, the where, the what, the development is when you discover the why. And to go back to Simon Sinek's, right? I've watched that as well and did, an essay on that. Like, you can't be productive at what you're about to attempt until you've answered that why question. And I tell my clients, the more time we spend here, the less time we'll waste over here. For every hour that we spend in development and pre-production, we're going to save 3 in post-production, because the last thing that we want to do is, after we've shot it, we're in the edit and going, oh, wouldn't it have been nice if we had that one story piece here, but we didn't think to shoot that because we didn't realize, by the time I'm shooting for you, I should have a pretty clear idea of every piece of that puzzle I'm supposed to be capturing, because I know why we're shooting it in the way that we're shooting it and where we're shooting it and when. And so that development phase is so important. Everyone does have a story. Every business has a story. Every product has a story. Why this product? Why now? And it's more than just advocating the features of the product. A good product is meeting some kind of a need. I want to know, who was it that first recognized that need? What kind of iterations did you go to get to this thing? Why is this the answer to that? When you communicate this to prospective customers, what is it that you say to try to convince them even the most fundamental, like basic products, there's usually a very interesting story behind it, but it takes time. It takes time to dig through it. And so I will carve out time with every client. Usually it's at least half a day where I'm either on site or I'm having phone calls or Zoom calls where I'm asking really kind of investigative questions. Yes, I understand you hired me to shoot this event, or you've hired me to create this piece of content for the website, but why? And I end up sounding like a toddler, but it's like, why? Why this person? Okay, you want to interview the CEO. Why? Are they the best person to communicate the story? Or was it actually someone else? And it takes time. And then usually at the end of every development discussion, we have been able to boil down to what we refer to as a purpose statement. It is a single sentence to communicate. My audience will, and I borrowed this from a previous employer and I've just shamelessly used it in my own because it's such genius. But my audience will think or feel or do something after watching my video because I will show and tell them something. So what is it that I want them to think or feel or do? Usually I want all 3 of those things to occur. And what is it that I'm going to show and tell them in order to accomplish that? And if I can't boil that down into a sentence, we have no business shooting anything yet. And so just taking time to ask those why questions. And then when you get to the point of shooting, you get to the point of editing, you get to the point of distribution. Where is this thing going to go? Who's the audience? Those are all questions to be answered back in development. It's actually a much smoother, much more enjoyable process for the client. And frankly, for me in the post-production, where I'm not going through 6 rounds of revisions, we're going through 1, maybe 2, because we've all had this very clear objective from the beginning.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great process that takes a lot of thoughtfulness to go through that. I bet when you are kind of prepping people, interviewing people, kind of teeing up questions and, kind of all the things you do before you turn the camera on, I bet you stump people. I bet they have trouble articulating themselves, right? I mean, because they're probably not thinking about this all the time. Is that right?
At times, I have found it's it's easier with non-for-profits. Um,
Okay.
they're usually very good about communicating the heart behind their mission because that's
Yeah.
kind of baked into a non-for-profit. Sometimes it's a little bit more tricky with businesses, but it's there. You just have to kind of dig for it a little bit. Why are you doing this thing? Why did you start this business? There's usually a cool story behind it. You've just got to ask the right kind of why questions. When we do what we do with Appian Media, why tell this particular biblical story now? How do we do that in the most effective way? It's not enough just to say, hey, we want to make some videos about Jesus. Well, Jesus is a pretty complex, fascinating individual. And there's a lot of different ways that we could tell that story. But why this story and why this way? And those were questions we spent months developing the why. And it really was to meet an unmet need that we saw. People were not producing the kind of biblically accurate and professionally produced and free content that we wanted to use, that we wished were available for us as teachers. And so our why was, we think this is needful. No one's doing it in this way. And we could complain about it or we could create it. And so we decided to create it.
So let's talk more about that side of it. I think that is amazing. You know, this nonprofit is a phenomenal thing you guys are doing. I've looked at it. It looks really cool. Talk to us a little bit about, like, you got up one day and you're like, I think I'm just going to start a nonprofit and start, telling stories about Jesus. Like there's churches that tell stories about Jesus. There's
Sure.
filmmakers that make movies about Jesus. Like, you can find Jesus in a lot of places. Like, what happened where you just woke up, like, I'm just tired of how everybody's telling stories about Jesus. I can do it differently or better. I can connect with this audience or that audience differently. Like, tell us that story real quick.
Well, I should start by saying when I went to film school, I swore to myself I would never start a business for myself. I did not want to work for myself.
Famous words.
And I
Never
said I
say
never
never.
really wanted to manage a team, like maybe manage a crew. I wanted to be a writer and director. So I was like, I'm never going to start my own business and I'm never going to like be an employer. And yet in the last 10 years, here I am. Like, I own my own business and I'm also the co-founder of a non-for-profit managing a team. What happened was Stuart and I had met at this coffee shop, and it was Stuart saying, I'm looking for this to teach in a Bible class. At the time, he was teaching a high school Bible class. And this was, he was looking for video that he could show in the classroom that was biblically accurate, historically accurate, that he didn't have to give any caveats and say, most of what they say is true, but there's a part here where it's clearly coming at it from a slant.
Gotcha.
So it needed to be accurate. It needed to be professionally produced. So at the time, Stuart was working in the Indianapolis area, producing and doing a great job at it. And he said, I can find videos online that are biblically accurate. I can get them on YouTube, and they are so boring the kids will never watch this.
Yep.
We kind of jokingly called them, they were called lectures from the land, where there's a guy and he's talking about Jerusalem and it's way off in the distance behind him. And he never really shows us Jerusalem. He just talks about, like, he's there, but it's a lecture. He just happens to be in the land. And Stuart said, I want something that feels like the Travel Channel or the History Channel. I want to take the viewer in and make them feel like they happen to be on the tour with us. And we wanted it to be free because we could find, in some instances, maybe 2 of those things accomplished. They were well produced, but we had to pay for them before we even knew whether they were biblically accurate. We aren't rolling in it, and we wanted something to use in our Bible class. We didn't want this paywall to hinder access to that. And so we said, we can't find this. It's a shame no one's done this. But it didn't take long for us to say, okay, well, what would it take for us to do that? How much would it
Yeah.
take for us? And so Appian was founded the end of 2015. We launched a Kickstarter campaign in the spring of 2016. So crowdfunding, and we're able to raise enough money to take a trip to Israel that summer and produce the first 5 episodes of what would become a 10-episode series about the life of Jesus, using that format, traveling over there with a couple of hosts who would interact with other people there, who would show us the sites, tie it to the scripture and the biblical narrative, and explain to us what they're seeing and why it's important and what it's supposed to mean.
So did you take people to the places where Jesus walked, where Jesus slept, where Jesus was on the cross and Jesus was buried, and the whole kind of 33 years of Jesus and where things happened? And
Yeah, to the best of our abilities. Obviously, I don't know where he slept.
yeah, I mean, some of that stuff may be a shopping mall by now, but yeah, I mean,
Actually, it probably is. But we do know he was born in Bethlehem, and there is a
right.
site that has been identified for a good long while that it's probably somewhere, if not in that exact spot. That was kind of what we had to do. Is there are numerous sites where we couldn't say, this spot, but we could say, look, somewhere probably within 100 yards of here, this thing happened. We could get out on the Sea of Galilee and say, hey, look, this is the Sea of Galilee. Jesus walked on this.
Yeah.
This is where he called his disciples. This is Capernaum. This is Jerusalem. This is the road. These are the steps up to the temple, and we did to the very best of our abilities to cover from birth in Bethlehem to his resurrection and his ascension and everywhere in between as much as we could.
Man, that is incredible. How do people see that? How do people connect with that? Is that on a site or a place? Because you said it was for free. So if you're of Christian faith and you're interested in kind of the walking, uh, journey of you and your team going to these historically relevant places and telling these stories and connect, how do people connect with that?
Sure. So every year we find new platforms, but our 2 principal ones is you can find us at appianmedia.org. So APPIAN media.org, or you can just Google us. You'll find us on YouTube. So all of the videos that we've produced, both the main series, which we've now done 4 or 5, 6 of those, 7 of those. Sorry. We also have a children's series, which we've been doing. So we kind of have major feature-length documentaries or docuseries. We do a children's series. We've got dozens of podcasts on there. And some of my personal favorites, we do quite a bit of behind the scenes. And so when we're over there in country traveling, like we pull back the curtain and show people what it is to take a group of 6 to 8 of us over there. And you'll find that all on our YouTube channel. But then we also have other streaming partners. Right Now Media, Faith Life TV. I believe some of our content is probably on PureFlix and other streaming platforms. Some of those are free and some of those you do have to pay for. But all of our content is freely available from our website and our YouTube channel.
That is amazing. How has this impacted other people's lives? People that are seeing this and validating, this is accurate. This is the real thing. This is not fake. That's the real, sidewalk Jesus walked down on, going to the Last Supper or whatever it was, right?
Right.
How has that impacted people? How's that impacted you in your life through this journey?
Yeah, it has been quite faith affirming. We're all believers who go over there. We all believed it to be true. And most of us, we do have a team member. His name is Barry, and he's in many of these videos. He has led tours over there for many years, but most of us had never seen it before. And so to see it with our own eyes after having read it for many years is really just quite faith affirming. I could tell you stories, and it's just so encouraging. Obviously, what we do is we produce it and we show it online. We do occasionally have in-person events. We just recently released a series called Out of Egypt, where we traveled to Egypt and Jordan and followed one of the paths of the Exodus. And we got to show that in theaters. So I actually got to see people face to face, as they're watching and consuming the content. A couple of stories stick in my mind is having parents come up to me and say, my kids sat for 2 hours and watched my 6-year-old kid sat and watched this for 2 hours. I never would have imagined them to watch a documentary, but they were glued and then had all these great questions afterwards. There was a teenager who said, I watched your series about the first kings of Israel. We did a series about, Saul and David and Solomon and archaeological proofs of that story. And this young lady said, I watched it and then I went home and I read 1 Samuel all the way through. Just in one, and I've never done that before. I just read a whole book of the Bible.
That's cool.
And it's like, that is one of my most favorite stories because that's what it's for.
Yeah.
Right. I don't necessarily want people to just binge watch our content and say, yeah, that was great. No, I want them to get into the word and get excited about the word again. And, but then there are, elderly people who are in their 80s who say, look, I'll never be able to travel over there. It's just not feasible for me anymore. But I've been a Christian for 50 years and I'm just now seeing it probably in the most accurate way I have in my whole life because you've shown me a place. So it's just originally designed for teenagers, for high schoolers, but we very quickly realized we are all visual learners. Yep. And we all benefit from seeing these places and seeing them come to life as we read the text.
Well, I just applaud those efforts to be courageous, to go to these types of places where sometimes there's some risks.
Sure.
Look at what's going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip and that historical area today. I mean, it's a very dangerous place, right? So to go there in a foreign land, not knowing what's happening and the safety, aspects of it, to do this important work, to document these historical figures, these historical events, is just amazing. It takes a lot of courage to go do that. And so, man, I just want to applaud you for, your bravery and the team to come together for a cause much bigger than yourself or your nonprofit, just showcasing a different aspect of life, which is our faith and our spirituality. And it, in a time where, a lot of people in our world question things and they think, my daughter is 21 years old and she gets her information from social media. She mentioned something about a political figure the other day. And I said, well, where did you get that information? I've never heard that about that person before. And I started pinning her. Well, I just saw it. I'm like, saw it where? Did you read about it on like Fox News or CNBC or like, Forbes or like where did you, and it turned out it was on a social media platform. Right. And people are they just think because it's on some form of media that's accessible to people, that it's just accurate, that it's truthful. And oh my gosh, I can't believe, somebody did this. I can't believe somebody said that. And like, well, how do you know they did? Like, people can manipulate things all the time. We have foreign governments that manipulate things and put it out there all the time,
Certainly.
right? And it kind of ties back to the beginning of our conversation. So I don't think there's anything more important to accurately tell the story than of the biblical times, and the times that, especially the 33 years that Jesus walked the streets, to just tell that story
Yes.
and give people access to those things in a very meaningful and historical and accurate manner. So, man, it takes a lot to do that. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for taking the time to be on the show, and for all the great work you're doing. If people want to connect with you, Craig, what's the best way to find you, connect with you, contact you, et cetera?
Sure. Probably the best way to connect with me personally would be to look me up on LinkedIn, Craig Dehut. It's an interesting thing. You can actually Google my name. I'm the only one on the internet. Right now,
Wow,
that's neat. Like if I become
that's
a
amazing.
criminal, it's going to be really easy to find me. But for now, it's cool. You can just Google me, and you can find my website. You can find me there on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you and hear your story and perhaps help you tell it. As far as Appian Media, appianmedia.org, there's a contact form there on that website. And if you fill that out, it actually comes directly to me or to Stuart. And so, if you've got questions or future series ideas, or if you want to support the mission, that all can be done there on the website.
Awesome. We're going to take all the contact information for Craig and his organizations, put that in the show notes, try to make them simple and convenient for you as always. Amazing young guy, tremendous work you're doing. Not only, in the faith side of things, but also just working with people in nonprofits. Nonprofits don't have a lot of money to spend and tell their story. And, it's harder and harder to get in front of people, to get donors to give money to you for your cause. It's harder for people to, sift through all of the different things for which you can give to charity. So, telling those stories for nonprofits, I think, is critical today. But not only just that, but even businesses, even churches, even other organizations, we all have stories to tell that need to be told, so that people can connect with the things and the other kinds of people they need to connect with, to do the things that's important to them and to live a happy, thriving, successful life as possible. So thanks for all your great work, man. It's impressive. And so today we are talking about your story and leveraging media and different types of media, mainly video, the most consumed content out there in the world today, to showcase that and connect on those emotions. Be real, be authentic, be all the things that Craig talked about today. And I can assure you, as somebody that's gone through this process myself, you will come out on top. You will differentiate. People will connect with you. The right kind of people will be drawn to you like a magnet. And it will, achieve the things that, hopefully you want to achieve. So that's it for today's show. Great show. Next week, got another big ticket host, guest, and topic we're going to be talking about next week. And you're going to love it. Here it is: how being lazy can help you become a wildly successful CEO. Yes, the lazier you are, the better leader you can be. And next week, we're going to peel that back and explain how that works. And I think we'll have a lot of fun with that at the same time. So that's it for today, folks. Have a great week, everybody.